And all I have to say to that is, where's the beef? You may be aware of the fact that I do love swords, but something else I've grown to love quite a lot is perfume. When I came across perfume inspired by a late 19th century military figure called Iron Duke, I just had to see what the scent says about perfume, combat and masculinity, and also if it smells good. Also that. So first, let's just speed run the basics in terms of perfume context. And then you can impress all your friends, enemies, and that one arch-rival who always wants to challenge you to a duel. People cracked the formula of putting nice smelling liquids on self to smell good pretty early on in history. In fact, perfume comes from Latin perfumare, which means to smoke through, and this will become relevant later. Love it when etymology becomes relevant later. Perfume has also always been rooted in chemistry. In fact, the first known chemist, Taputi, was a perfume maker, and her fragrant creations are mentioned on a Mesopotamian tablet. Which is why you should always leave a review. Can be on a clay tablet, but in the comments is a lot easier and highly recommended. Perfume only grew in popularity throughout the centuries, especially during that awkward part in European history where nobody bathed, and soon turned into a thriving industry. But how gendered was this industry? Not that gendered to begin with, as far as I can see from my research, as far as I can smell. Men feature heavily in early history of perfume, both as creators and as wearers, which included guys you'd consider manly and military leaders. Which is why perfume, which was perfected in the Middle East, may have been brought back by soldiers to medieval Europe, and fast forwarding a few centuries, Louis XVI apparently had a new perfume made for him every single week and would just douse his shirts with floral orange water. And fast forwarding a few extra centuries, Napoleon was so into perfume that he would ask his official perfumer to send him every month a few bottles of it. And by a few bottles I mean 50 bottles of his favourite perfume every month. But that wasn't just 50 bottles of any old scent. In fact, it was a scent that had already been contributing to gendering perfume. And this was Eau de Cologne, created by an Italian perfumer in the 18th century as a tribute to the city of Cologne.
I don't know what I expected.
Even though the scent started off as unisex, it soon became specifically associated to men's perfume, and the rest is unnecessarily gendered marketing history. I was fully prepared to break the rules of gender if our perfume was for men. Thankfully, it's actually unisex. The perfume house it is from, Beaufort, did start off as a purveyor of mustache wax, but they soon focused on perfume based around a very specific theme, the idea of smoke from the original etymology of perfume, and have built an aesthetic that is very history but make it goth. So it comes from a series Revenant, described as a collection of olfactory impressions of figures from Britain's past, characters from history whose present lingers. Subtly. I wouldn't know how to take it if I was told that my present lingers subtly, but it feels like a slightly backhanded compliment and I can't really explain why. This perfume, designed by perfumer Julie Dunkley, is described as a tribute to Arthur Wellesley, Duke of Wellington. This 19th century figure is described by Beaufort as a horseman, warrior politician, and sartorial pioneer. If I bring back the business casual suit of armour, can I be a sartorial pioneer? And this is how our perfume is described. A strikingly powerful fragrance with animalic depth. Iron Duke prevails in and blurs the man-beast dichotomy. The fragrance creates an apparition of horse and rider. Bright metal, cognac? I'm gonna get exiled by the French side of my heritage. Bright metal, cognac, snuff and saddle soap atop a base of oud, animal leather, and hay. And hey, let's unpack some of that. The fragrance description does carry the same energy as other products seemingly marketed to men. Kind of like horse girl energy, but make it as macho as you can. If we break it down, the base is gunpowder, hay, musk and bourbon. The heart is what you'd call the primary scents that tie the concept of the perfume together. Saddle soap, leather, burnt wood, metal and animalic, which I'm assuming isn't just smells like wet dog as a scent, because that wouldn't be very attractive, but hey, it could be. And the notes are tobacco, alcohol and metal. Am I going to be smelling like wet dog and booze? Will this make me smell like a sartorial pioneer? These are the illuminating questions we ask ourselves, so let's test this perfume. Here we go. Here we go. It's a lot. So I can definitely feel that kind of musky, heavy, incensey smell. I can definitely smell that kind of leathery leather. I think I can smell something of the tobacco. It feels basically, if this was a very, very old pub filled with smoke, which, hey, I know Beaufort is all about smoke, so this tracks somehow. It's pretty interesting. No idea where the metal is coming from. Can't smell the hay. And I can't really smell the gunpowder either. I don't really know what gunpowder smells like, but I feel that if I smelt it, I would know what it was. Friends, enemies, arch rivals challenging me to duels. I have a very important update. I can smell the hay. It's this kind of like sweet smell without being too sickly, and definitely has a lot of body to it. That's how I'm describing this perfume in the most unappealing way possible. But let's have a closer look at the historical figure versus his perfume inspiration. Arthur Wellesley was the first Duke of Wellington and an Anglo-Irish soldier, as well as a Tory politician because nobody is perfect. He served twice as Prime Minister, although the second time was less than a month, aka the average lifespan of a lettuce. He also won and ended the Napoleonic Wars, and was an instrumental part of the Battle of Waterloo in 1815. Waterloo, a guy involved in it would inspire perfume. Please don't sue me ever. Now, Bulwer wasn't wrong about this guy's military track record, since he took part in about 60 battles, although funnily enough, he wasn't exactly the type to just rush into battle guns a-blazing, and was more defense than an offense type of guy. But already early on during his lifetime, there was already quite a lot of mythologizing around this guy's quirks, like the fact that he was so austere he'd live on cold meat and bread, even though he liked his quality wine. But he wasn't all doom and gloom, as he was also reported to throw chicken drumsticks in the air while working out military tactics and dancing the flamenco when Napoleon abdicated. Oh, Wellington, you're so random. I can't believe you did that. Not only that, but he was also apparently a notorious ladies' man. Though I like to think that there's something to the fact he was very close to his soldier servant Beckerman and his valet of 25 years, who was by his side when he passed away, James Kendall. I tried to find more about the bi-vibes, the vibes if you will, but all my research uncovered was a gay bar in Soho called the Duke of Wellington. So that's something in terms of queer legacy. I'd love to get a lesbian bar named after me. Can you imagine? A lesbian Meads tavern? That sounds fantastic. But Wellington, in his own way, also challenged the gender norms to some extent, rather than being some kind of hypermasculine Übermensch, and was known to openly cry, quite often after a defeat, due to the loss of human life, and even broke down in tears after refusing to be congratulated for his victory at Waterloo due to that very reason. He was also disabled, having had his hearing impaired by an explosion, and he wasn't always the iron-willed disciplinarian that his nickname made him out to be, as quite a few records indicate that he wanted to prioritise the well-being of his troops. In fact, the Iron Duke nickname became used to refer to him a lot more after he installed metal shutters on windows at Apsley House to prevent damage from rioters. Not exactly the kind of glamorous, iron-clad, riding into battle imagery that you kind of expect from the perfume itself. In fact, he had other nicknames like the Beau, as a reference to his snappy dressing, the Conqueror of the World, referring to his defeat of Napoleon, and the Beef, because he may have allegedly originated the dish which we now know as Beef Wellington. And all I have to say about that in terms of the different base notes in this perfume is, where's the beef? Wellington. What does this perfume tell us about fragrance, combat, and masculinity? Well, I found it very interesting to see how the history of perfume itself seems to perpetuate that idea for scents that are aimed and marketed at men, of this idea of really putting on your armour for seduction, and how perfume used to be quite unisex but has become increasingly gendered, which is why it was also a pleasant surprise to see that this perfume was unisex, even though it does still feel as though it is marketed at men, just in a way in which it talks about the dichotomy between man and beast. The perfume itself is definitely very, very overbearing, and I do appreciate the fact that it tries to introduce these notes of leather and hay and different unconventional scents to try and paint this portrait. And when it comes to the actual accuracy of perfume portrayal, I don't think you really want whiffs of beef in your perfume, but I do find it interesting that this perfume is in many ways a commentary on that idea of the hypermasculine military man and this idea of the Iron Duke in a very warrior-like armoured rider aesthetic, when the reality of the historical figure seems to have been a lot more sensitive than what we might imagine. But they didn't necessarily take the idea of Duke of Wellington as this ladies' man as being the baseline of the perfume either. Overall, a really, really interesting interpretation, and something that's quite telling about how we continue to perpetuate these different romanticized idea of masculinity and military culture, when some aspects of it historically were a lot more nuanced. Would I wear this perfume again? Absolutely. It really has actually grown on me. Definitely give it a try if you're looking for something that makes you feel as though you could defeat Napoleon, I guess. Which, hey, why not? I'm French. I'll allow it. But I think that's going to do it for today. Let me know if you've come across other perfumes inspired by military history figures that you'd like me to review, because why not? Stay safe, sword lovers, and see you in another video.